Give him a first start, and I just love being on the show and was being able to fly.
I know, you brought your best leather.
What's
going on, Pinky Tuckadero?
This is what I wear to the bar. I was told wear what you wear to the bar, which usually involves more sequins, but I thought I'll tone it down. On
only one of us should wear sequins. I already called that.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Well, only one person can wear sequins on the show, and that is Matthew Berry. It is Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry here today in studio to start things off. I'm Julie Stewart-Binks. I'm along for the ride. We missed you yesterday.
I know. There was an insane thing. They shut down 10 miles of 95, and if you live in Connecticut, you know, like, that is massive because that's pretty much the only way to get here. So I'm driving through neighborhoods, and anyway, it was just an awful thing. And I don't want to be dismissive of it, because the reason they shut down 10 miles of the highway is because there were three people that got shot. I mean, so it's an awful story, and they were investigating, and so the police were doing their jobs, and so, you feel dumb complaining about traffic when, there's this tragedy happening, and I think all three people are alive, and, in the hospital, and certainly the police need to do their job. So appreciate, the boys in blue keeping us safe, But yeah, that's why I was late.
How stressed were you?
Super stressed, because I'm like, it was your first day.
It was my first day, and it's your show, and you're just probably like, what is going to happen?
I know. It was anyway. So, but you and Jay Croucher, who, by the way, shout out to Jay Croucher, new member of the NBC Sports family, joining us.
Congratulations!
Officially over here as a sports betting expert. He'll be here on. He will be here next week. He's actually he has some personal stuff that he's celebrating this weekend, but he'll be with us next week. So we're thrilled that Jay is here. You and Jay, I thought, did a great job yesterday.
Thanks. We almost took it down to having some Arsenal footy talk.
Right.
It very quickly almost went soccer talk on the football show.
You love your soccer. You love getting on the pitch.
Again, NBC property, so we can dip into that every so often for a little bit. But we know that this is the Love-Hate show.
Thank you.
And I wore my Def Leppard
Love Bites. Thank you very much.
I got disapproved before I wore this on because I was worried.
You got no leather jacket.
No leather jacket.
Are those leather pants?
Leather pants.
All right. As long as leather is.
It's going to be leather or sequins, and because I'm a big sequins fan, but I'm gonna wait for that one until there's a celebration of some sort.
All right, understood.
Okay, so let's get to the Love-Hate show. And
Love-Hate is available now, by the way. For the column is for free. If you haven't, you can check out the entire column. NBCSportsEdge.com, RotoWorld.com. Of course, I'm a company man.
You put a lot of work into it, but we're gonna get to the RotoWorld headlines.
This is why I should let you host.
I don't know.
Well, at least you're keeping us on track. All right, what do we got?
Somewhat on track. Okay, so big news, of course. We know that Keenan Allen is out for week 2 against the Chiefs with a hamstring injury, and it looks as though potentially Mike Williams and Josh Palmer are going to be looking at getting some targets.
I understand a lot of excitement about DeAndre Carter after the game last week, and I get it. I think he'll be involved here. But, yeah, to me, this is a big Mike Williams game. He played one game last year with Keenan Allen out. That was week 14. 6 for 61. He was second in targets with 6. Both games against Kansas City, and he plays the Chiefs here. 9 targets in both the games against the Chiefs. We expect this to be a very high-scoring game. The over-under is north of 54. So 7, 122, and 1 in week 3 against Kansas City, kind of his coming-out party, if you will. In the one game that Keenan Allen did not play, Mike Williams and Josh Palmer, in that order, that's how you should play them, combined for a 43% target share. 5 for 66 and a touchdown for Josh Palmer in that one game that Allen missed. Again, a lot of fireworks in this game. We think it's a more narrow target tree now. So you've got Mike Williams, you've got Josh Palmer. I think Gerald Everett will be involved as well. Obviously, Eckler out of the backfield. Very exciting first game.
There's a lot of options there for Justin Herbert. I'm very excited to see what he can do.
100%. Yeah, no, he'll be great. Where are you on his hair? Do you like shaggy?
The
Justin
flow.
Herbert?
I'm a hockey gal, so I always love the flow.
All right, fair.
So that's. But I guess guys like it, the high and tight or whatever.
Especially if you got to wear a helmet.
Yes. Oh yeah. You gotta. Yeah. I wear a helmet in hockey, and it's always messy all around there. So I guess in football.
Wait, you do? Do you play hockey now still? And you wear a helmet in hockey? Is it like?
Of course, yes.
Right, obviously.
Big time.
Where do you play hockey?
Chelsea Piers in Manhattan.
Is your team any good?
Actually, we start this week. Which,
all right.
We start tonight. I'm not going. I
Is
took the night off.
Is it all women? Is it co-ed?
No,
like
it's dudes, and I'm on this team. They're so nice.
So it's all dudes and you.
Mm-hmm. I played that way since I was younger. Well, I played on women's teams as well.
Right.
But this one was easier to get onto. They just asked me, and so it's kind of a beer league type of team.
Right.
I mean, they're good.
Do you get body checked? A decent
There's
amount?
no checking allowed in the league, but if anyone gets body checked, it is anyone I'm going up against.
All right, fair enough.
Because, I mean, if you can't score, you got to be able to make an impact somehow, and that's usually my strategy, going after the big guys, and that doesn't work out.
Yeah, if you can't score, you got to make an impact somehow.
You do,
by the way,
right?
that was my motto in high school.
Yeah, well, speaking of impacts, we have DeAndre Swift, who did not practice on Wednesday, but because of an ankle situation, he rolled it during the second quarter of the Lions-Eagles game, but he did stay in, and we know that he still had a career-best passing performance. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, it's something to monitor because this is somebody who has missed 7 games in his first 2 years, obviously, with the Lions, but he made my love list this week. Mm-hmm. He is, one of my bold predictions coming into the season was DeAndre Swift finishes as the #1 running back in fantasy. That is within the range of outcomes for DeAndre Swift, right? I mean, it's a very good, it's an underrated and very good offensive line. He's a true 3-down back. He is insanely talented. If he had landed in another team other than Detroit, I think we would think about him differently because coming out of Georgia, he was just so dynamic, just an unbelievable talent. A lot of people, he was the most talented running back coming out of that class, just from a pure, skill set standpoint. So it's something to monitor given his injury history. And obviously, I think Jamal Williams must be rostered in 100% of leagues because DeAndre Swift is rostered in 100% of leagues. And I'm a believer in getting insurance backs when you know the guy. If DeAndre Swift were to miss time, it would be Jamal Williams and he would be successful. So when you know a situation like that, I always want to get that insurance running back. That said, at the moment, it doesn't, because he returned to practice today, it doesn't feel that serious. It just seems like precautionary, but just something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. And I mean, the fact that he was still able to contribute when he was dealing with the injury, I mean, says something at least, and hopefully you just don't want it to be a long-term thing. And I know as a Commanders fan, though.
I was just going to say, if he needs to miss the game this week, I'm okay with it.
It's got to have changed the line because it was -2.5 before. It's -1.5 now.
I mean, because people are insane. -2.5. But the Lions, the 0-1 Lions, are getting 2.5 are 2.5-point favorites over my undefeated first place Washington Commanders.
You're so hyped up on those Commanders.
We want to know.
I know the Kool-Aid is flowing so hard in Washington. I got to see more from Carson Wentz and
you've been body checked a lot in your life in hockey.
I've been body checking other people. Okay, people that have been body checked. This is my segue, being a little banged up. George Kittle groin missed practice on Wednesday, and we're not sure what his status is. Questionable. Shanahan said that he has made a lot of progress. How do you feel this one plays out?
I'm really hoping he gets out there. And honestly, if he's active, they're playing against Seattle. Again, we saw how Denver attacked Seattle. Seattle's linebacker core is not good. Like, attack Seattle's linebackers. Like, that is a place to go. And so I think even at a 50%, George Kittle, he would be a good play this week because of the uncertainty of the injury. I have him at tight end 6 so far in my initial ranks. We'll see as the week progresses. So hope springs eternal here with Kittle, but feels like this is one of those things that feels like it's going to keep nagging. And I will say this, it is worth noting, on Fantasy Football pregame this past Sunday, we had Mike Ryan, who is NBC's injury analyst. Like, he spent 20 years as the head trainer of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he said he has concerns for Kittle being able to stay healthy all season long. He thinks this is going to be a recurring injury. So we'll see. But it feels like this is always kind of.
Well, he's missed 14 games since he played he played 16 games in 2018. So when you have guys, as you mentioned, with Mike Ryan saying that, it's not a good prognosis outlook.
It's not ideal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what I said after Mike said that, I said, wait till he comes back, Kittle. Wait till he has a big game. And then trade him. And then try to trade him. You know what I mean?
But would a team bite on that after just one game?
What's weird is not everyone, because he's still a big name. He'll have big production. Not everyone watches our show. I mean, most people do, but not everyone does.
I think everyone does.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie.
there's a handful of people.
A lot of people are watching this show, including my mom.
All right, there you go. Well,
yes.
we got Mama Binks.
Yes. And, okay, so we know that the Bucs at practice yesterday, a lot of guys didn't practice. But it's Wednesday. Some of them just taking time off for maintenance. But we know that Chris Godwin, hamstring injury, Julio Jones, Russell Gage, they all didn't practice on Wednesday. Mike Evans, Rashad Bateman. There's a lot of guys that are sort of sidelined. What do you make of this?
You know, and it's really interesting. That's a great question. I think some of it is precautionary. You've got a bunch of older veteran players, so they want to take it easy, obviously. Godwin, obviously, you know, we know he's not going to play in this one.
Right.
But it's interesting. So, I mean, just literally before we went on air, I got an alert from the Fantasy Life app, my Fantasy Life app, and it's a tweet from Rick Stroud, who covers the Bucs. And here's what the Bucs wide receivers Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were not at the portion of practice open to the media. Russell Gage and Leonard Fournette were working. Tom Brady also practicing. Julio Jones not practicing. So I think this is one of those ones that we're going to just have to wait and see. We don't love Mike Evans. Hint for what's coming up later in the show. He's the face of the Saints. He's got Marshawn Lattimore. He has struggled against Lattimore. So in theory, that a healthy Julio Jones or Russell Gage should have a nice day against the Saints because they're going to get a lot of targets. Probably a big Uncle Lenny game as well. But this is a story to pay attention to. Now the fact that Julio's not practicing a second day in a row, like Wednesday, I'm like, it's a veteran day off. But Thursday, it's a little concerning, especially given Julio's injury history. Friday will be a big day.
Okay, so we know also that Mike Evans has also been ruled out. We've just been told.
It just came through. Mike Evans
has
been ruled out.
Official. I just want to double check that.
Just not practicing today.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad I double checked at that one moment.
Very
there.
important.
You know, because
there's a lot of benefits to drinking on the job. You know, the way you and I do.
Water.
But one of them is I'm not. But
reporting news while you're drinking, yes, got to double check it.
So, anyway, because Mike Evans not practicing today.
Mike Evans not practicing today, but we do know that Chris Godwin
he won't play.
Yeah,
Chris Godwin's not going to play. That's the one we know
so
for sure. The rest we're going to wait and see. Evans not practicing today. Julio not practicing today. Gage and Fournette were.
Right.
Okay.
And we are going to get into Julio a bit more later on because he did have a big first game with Tom Brady. Holy smokes, was that incredible that I did not see coming. But we know that T. Higgins was limited in practice Wednesday, but he is making good progress and he's cleared the necessary concussion steps.
Which is great news. I mean, again, I got to give credit to my friend Stefania Bell on this. She always talks about concussions. She's one of the experts in the industry, not the fantasy industry, literally the medical industry. She's written books about this as well. And so she always talks about the fact concussions are nonlinear injuries. And so somebody could have a good day and then they have a bad day. And so let's see. Sounds like T. Higgins is progressing and hopefully he's out there on Sunday against the Cowboys for the Bengals. Mm-hmm. They need him. They're 0-1. This is a game they need to win, especially given Cooper Rush. But my expectation here is, so if T. Higgins is playing, you're starting him, but let's see. So far, trending towards the right direction. Look, Dallas has a good defense, but they're going to be on the field a lot because I don't think their offense is going to do much. So I do think you're starting your normal Bengals.
Right, like if Higgins does play and he is coming off of a concussion, then you could imagine that he's then maybe not likely going to see as much volume as he would regularly.
I think he'll be. I think if he's out there, he's out there.
It's out there. Okay.
I think if he's out there, he's out there. If he is active, I think you're starting him.
Okay.
So I think he'll be fine. I currently have him at wide receiver 15. So I have a mid-tier wide receiver 2.
All right.
Very solid.
Well, then we have Allen Lazard.
Yeah, this is good news.
He had an ankle injury, returned to practice on Wednesday.
Good.
Still questionable, but if he returns, that would be absolutely huge for Rodgers.
Yeah, that whole offense just kind of blanked the bed the other day in week 1, but that's what happened last week as well, right? And last year, in week 1. Like, they were brutal against the Saints. Hey, you see, sit here and see it on your screen. Romeo Doubs, 4 for 37. Sammy Watkins, week 1, Sammy Watkins, 3 for 18. Christian Watson, 2 for 32, 2 for 34, had that awful drop. Randall Cobb, 2 for 14. Just, it was bad across the board. A.J. Dillon actually had more receptions and receiving yards than any Green Bay wide receiver in week 1. Allen Lazard is the true number one on this team. He has a connection with Aaron Rodgers. He has been productive in the past. So my expectation here is that Lazard comes back, and they have a big game. Aaron Rodgers at home on primetime in Lambeau against the Bears, who he owns.
Yes. He
literally
claims
owns
he owns.
He does own them.
Which is
Numbers
great
don't
bulletin board material for the Bears.
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be anything to do about it. So anyway, I like Lazard. I am at 39. I might be a little bit too low on him. Let's see. But now as he progresses back, if he's full participant in health today and practice both today and tomorrow, I think he'll move up from 39. But I like Lazard. I do think I'm high on the Packers this week. I think they killed the Bears.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're 10-point favorites, I believe, at this point. At least they are huge favorites over the Bears.
Yeah, that's a big number. That's a big number. I don't know that I don't know that I want to. I don't know that they win by more than 10. That's a big number.
I know. I actually said yesterday I thought that they would win by more than that, and then I realized that was just crazy talk.
That's a big number because the defense isn't terrible, but they do have a good defense.
It's going to be completely different from last week for both of these teams.
100%.
And we know also ESPN's Todd Archer said it's unlikely that Michael Gallup with knee injury, recovering from the ACL injury, will play in week 2. Unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're starting the run. I mean, it's listen, it's Cooper Rush. I think you're still starting CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz because again, I just think massive volume for those two guys, even though it won't be particularly efficient. And I think you're probably starting, if you would normally start Zeke and Pollard, you would start them again, but you have to lower expectations for the Cowboys offense across the board.
Right. Well, CeeDee Lamb did have a decent outing with Cooper Rush last year when he came in. He had like 17 fantasy points or maybe it was something like that. Stats.
CeeDee Lamb is the number one wide receiver on this team. He's going to get a big target share. They're going to have to throw. Cooper Rush is not Dak Prescott. He's not going to be as good, but still, just the amount of routes and the amount of routes that Lamb is targeted on the highest. Like you're still starting CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
He's no longer like a top 5 wide receiver though. He's probably he's more of a top 20 wide receiver, but you're still starting CeeDee Lamb. And I do think Dalton Schultz will do well here too. The Bengals struggle against tight ends again. That's Schultz made the love list this week.
He did, and we have the love-hate list, and we are going to begin with the running backs.
Okay.
So I think we know who might be numero uno on this list, and it is Saquon Barkley.
Look, the concerns on Saquon Barkley were twofold. We talked about this earlier in the week, right? Can he get the explosiveness back? Is he going to get the workload? Will the offensive line be able to hold up? And honestly, he was great. He was the number 1 running back in fantasy last week, right? 33.4 fantasy points. I'm his running back 5 against Carolina. 24 touches, 194 scrimmage yards, 33% target share. That's the crazy part to me, 33% target share. So involved in all of the, in the passing game as well. It was his best fantasy game since week 16 of 2019. And then you think about this matchup with the Carolina Panthers, who allowed over 210 yards of scrimmage and 2 touchdowns to opposing Browns running backs. So I think Saquon just goes absolutely ham once again. I have him as a top 5 play this week. Week 1 was not a mirage. Saquon is back.
He's back, baby. And I mean, if you have a coach that's dancing like Brian Daboll too, that's an added X factor at the end of the game. Yeah, that's a very Ted Lasso move, right? But I love that. You can just tell it's a different vibe with the team.
100%. No, listen. I mean, I think weirdly it's less the coaching staff and more that Gettleman's gone. But yes, definitely it's
You're celebrating something.
It's a whole new regime, and good for Brian Daboll. Going for it that stuff matters. Hey, let's try to win this. Let's go for we're not going to kick the extra point. We're going to go for 2. And then Saquon made a great run to get into the end zone and convert that to. That's big. That's big for the whole team, and you start building on that momentum. And so all of a sudden the Giants are sitting here looking, you know what? We thought we were going to be, get our butts kicked, but the Giants are sitting here looking like we just beat Tennessee. Now we get Carolina. We could win that game. Week 3, we're playing Dallas without Dak Prescott.
You start looking down the list.
Start looking down, and you're like, you know what?
Got some confidence.
We could be 3-0, and Dallas is no longer a contender in this, in this division. So, anyway, you start buying your own hype, and that feeds into it. You start believing in yourself, right? And so
it can work both ways, but I think for the Giants, they need it because they've definitely had, whether it's within the team or from the outside, a lot of negativity over the last couple of years. So any positivity helps. Now, we mentioned him earlier on in the show, and it is DeAndre Swift making your love list.
Again, want to make sure he's healthy, but looks like right now he's on track. It was just precautionary that he missed Wednesday's practice. 65% of the snaps. He played 65% of the snaps. He was on 100% of third downs here. He's had 17 or more touches in 9 of his last 11 healthy games. The 15 carries he had were more than he had in all but one game last season. So they are committing to him. They're committing to the usage is massive here. And as much as my undefeated first-place Washington Commanders are great, and they are, it is worth noting that they did allow 134 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns to Jacksonville running backs in week 1. And honestly, Travis Etienne should have scored a touchdown. He dropped one. You know what I mean? So it's like, it could have been an even bigger number for the running backs against Washington. So I do think DeAndre Swift, who I have as running back 6 this week, has a big game in a losing effort to my undefeated first-place Washington Commanders.
I do think the Commanders are very interesting.
I don't understand how they're 2.5-point dogs. I don't understand how they're 2.5-point dogs. I bet that game as soon as I heard that line. Give me the Commanders getting 2.5.
Well, you're going to bet it anyway.
I don't often bet on the Commanders because my heart. I don't put my heart where my money.
I hear you. I'm from Toronto. I definitely don't bet on anything coming out of there, unless it's basketball for the most part. Okay, let's move on to, you also mentioned him before, and I'm so glad I listened to you and Jay talking about him, but A.J. Dillon. Picked him up because you guys were hyped on him, and it paid off.
It did. You know, I've been high on him for quite some time, and he was a big preseason favorite for me. The quad father, A.J. Dillon, led the Packers in touches and scrimmage yards in week number 1, twice as many carries, more targets than Aaron Jones in a game in which the Packers were trailing. That was the shocking thing. In a game in which the Packers are trailing, you'd think, well, this is going to be an Aaron Jones game now because he's the pass-catching running back. I just used Jared's quotes with you. And you know what? And whatevs. I like that you just let it roll. You didn't call me out on it. And yet it was still A.J. Dillon. I think Aaron Jones is going to get more involved.
Definitely.
100%. I'm not worried about Aaron Jones. Don't panic yet on Aaron Jones. But A.J. Dillon's for real. Again, and we think they're 10-point favorites at home. They're going to be up. They're going to be up big. Bears allowed 176 rushing yards in week 1 in that monsoon.
They're going to be rearing to go, you got to think.
Yeah, and by the way, like Aaron Rodgers sitting there, what are my choices? I can either throw to Christian Watson and let him drop something again, or I can hand off to A.J. Dillon and just beat these guys up. I think they're up big in the second half, obviously. Big week coming for A.J. Dillon. I have him as a top 20 play this week.
Okay, so I got to ask you, I saw RG3 tweeted that Green Bay needs to lean all the way into the run game. Do you agree that maybe you just go fully for the run game? And yeah, sure, maybe if you do have a Watson open or you see a Watkins open, you decided to go for him, or you just stick with Old Faithful.
Okay, so I love Robert Griffin III.
Yes, there's a little bit of history there too.
I'm a Commanders fan. RG3 is one of my favorite players of all time. Like his rookie year, magical. I know him a little bit. You know, we were colleagues at ESPN, so I've met him a few times and talked to him. He sent me a very nice tweet publicly, you know, but he sent both a private note and a very nice tweet when I left ESPN, you know, like, so I love RG3. And who am I to question RG3 talking about quarterbacks, right? I mean, this is a Heisman Trophy winner. All that said, I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy talk because I understand his point, which is that, listen, that's going to be a strong suit for the Packers, especially now that we expect them to get their, you know, Bakhtiari. We expect him to play this week. We expect Jenkins back. So we think their offensive line will be healthier this week. And so wanted to lean on that run game. I get that. But I'm not taking the ball out of 12's hands. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's Aaron freaking Rodgers.
Great.
Like, I get it. He doesn't have Devontae Adams, but he's made chicken out of chicken blank before. I think he will do it again. Get him a healthy, you know, get him Alan Lazard. Romeo Doubs was a bit banged up last week as well. I know he played, but he missed some practice time. Aaron Rodgers is going to be just fine.
Right. And we know that they talked about it. Matt LaFleur said, you know, it's going to take some time, for the communication to work out and the younger guys. And he kind of has to be, Rodgers, more of like a coach and a quarterback as well. As, you know, you got to take the young guns underneath your shoulder or whatever they. I'm kind of like the wide receiver in your Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, is that what you were just doing?
Under your shoulder.
Were you just taking a young gun under your
Yeah, because I don't know how to do it, right? Because usually someone is helping me, so right. I wouldn't know how that goes.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah,
I don't know what that was. It was chicken wing, super awkward.
Yeah.
I feel like
but that's my game. Yeah,
that is your game.
Yeah,
I feel like
awkward.
I could see you like when you're playing hockey and you're body checking these dudes that you just like.
I'm kind of like a Michael Scott. I just never really.
Do they treat you when you're on a? Here's a question. I'm sure that your hockey teammates, you're just one of the dudes. That I know. But like
I'm Julie Stewart-Binks, yes.
Okay, right,
yes.
I understand. But like but you're one of the. I mean, like I assume they treat you as one of the guys, right? You're like.
Well, they finally passed me the puck, is what you're saying. After
Right.
this many years, they're like, okay, I guess that we will pass Julie the puck. Didn't happen. It didn't happen that way when I was younger. I'd be wide open, just tapping my stick, and everyone would look at me and then look like for someone else open.
But the other team? Is the other team aware that you're a woman? And
Yeah,
like,
you can see my
like
ponytail.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
usually the giveaway.
Do they
But
treat you
guys
with
have
kid
fun.
gloves, or are they just like whatever? You're on the ice and you're on the ice.
No, that's the thing. Like if you're on the ice and you're also trying to, throw it around a bit in front of the net, like you better be ready to play. And if you get injured, that's your own fault. So
I'm impressed.
Because
I get him. I would not
that's
do
the
that.
thing. It's like if I'm going to stand in front of the net and start throwing elbows, like I got to be willing to take one.
That's true.
And so
that's a good point.
Yes, and last but not least, I did fight a guy once on the ice, so that looked really bad for him. But yes.
Did you win?
I don't know. We both got 5-minute penalties, and I think I won in theory.
I think you won in theory.
Because if a dude fights a guy on the ice, it just doesn't look good for him.
No,
right?
exactly. I think you won in the hearts of America.
I did.
That much is very true.
Yes. Okay,
What
let's
else
look
we
at the
have?
other notables in the love category. We got Chase Edmonds.
70% of the running back carries, a 13% target share in week 1. Again, Jets running backs had 19 targets in week 1 against Baltimore. This is a nice matchup for Chase Edmonds here.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying usage, and you'll see in my love-hate column, I talk about that.
Over-unders.
I'm encouraged by the underlying usage for Chase Edmonds.
Right.
Patience on him.
And he had 40 rushing yards against a stout New England front. And the over-under set at 39.5 rushing yards. So I would take the over on that. Jeff Wilson, nice little pickup there.
Yeah, I mean, like playing against the Seahawks, right? Obviously, we expect, I know the Seahawks gutted out a win against the Broncos, but still, like Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon each should have had a rushing touchdown in that particular game here. We know they want to run the ball. Seattle isn't, particularly stout against the defense. I mean, they allowed 182 yards from scrimmage to Denver running backs in week number 1. Jeff Wilson was the only San Francisco running back to get a touch after the Mitchell injury. Now, they'll have other guys up, and they signed Marlon Mack. I get it. But I think he's going to be the starting running back on a good offense and a good matchup. I think he's a viable flex play. He comes in at running back 27 for me. You're still going to see some Debo rushing, and you're still going to have some design runs for Trey Lance. So I'm not all the way in on Jeff Wilson, but I do think he's a viable.
You're not all the way in?
He's
Man,
a viable
I got
flex.
hypes. I drank the Kool-Aid on the Jeff Wilson.
That's fine.
Temper your expectations.
Yeah, exactly. It's watered down Kool-Aid.
Okay, perfect.
Sugar-free Kool-Aid is what you should be drinking on Jeff Wilson. Again, I have him as a flex play because I think you'll see some Mason, you'll see some TDP in there as well. Again, Debo and Lance. Like it'll be a committee, but if you're starting a 49ers running back this week, it's Jeff Wilson Jr.
Good, perfect. Okay,
and I do like him this week.
Another starting running back, Rex Burkhead. You really like?
I like his matchup this week. I mean, like, don't get on national television, JSB.
I'm just reading what's on the script.
And accuse me of really liking Rex Burkhead. What I will say is that I have him at running back 34 this week against Denver. That's higher than I ever thought I would. 14 carries and 8 targets last week for the Texans in a game in which they led. Right, he had a 49-19 snap differential between him and Dameon Pierce. 49-19. Right, he played 100% of the third downs. He played all the 2-minute stuff. Houston's a 10-point underdog. So the expectation here is again, he played all the third down and the 2-minute stuff. They view him as their pass-catching running back. They probably trust him a lot more in pass pro at this point. So the fact of the matter is that we expect Rex Burkhead to be on the field quite a bit. I'm at running back 34. I do think he's a viable deeper. If you're desperate at running back, he's a viable deeper league play. Again, 34. Let's
temper it. Not hot on. Just again.
He's higher than I would normally have him though.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, but I love the love-hate. Like you hate these guys.
I hate their ranking.
I know,
I hate their matchup. Right. Okay.
And the first one is Najee Harris.
Yeah, I mean, like a little bit banged up here, and this is nervous because I'm doing a guillotine draft right now.
Again, I love this idea.
And so I explained it yesterday, but the guillotine draft is very simple. Shout out to my friend Paul Charchian who runs these on guillotineleague.com. But basically, you draft, and you can start at any time. So we're starting now. Like you can start in week 3, week 4, whenever. And basically everyone drafts, and the lowest scoring team in the league is chopped. And you're out of the league forever. And then all of your players go back in to the pool, and you keep doing that every week until only one remains. It's an unbelievable sweat. It's really fun and intense. So the idea is you just want to survive week to week to week. And I just drafted Najee Harris because they had no other running back. So I'm nervous about that. 10 for 23 also makes me nervous in week 1, right? Chase Claypool actually led the team in rushing yards. He had 36. He had just a 5% target share, which is lower than any game he had in 2021. And is that a function of that particular game? They were winning against Cincinnati. Is it
there
Mitch?
was a lot of different factors.
There's a lot of different factors. It's a weird game, but is that, did he get the target share, which we think last year because Ben's arm was shot and that was all he could do. And so Mitch, who can, air it out a little bit more, I don't know. It's super nervous to me. They're playing the Patriots. New England allowed only 65 rushing yards and 2.8 yards per carry to the Dolphins in week 1. So it's a tough matchup. He's not being involved in the passing game. Makes me nervous.
They're not favorites at home.
Right. He's there. I have at running back 15, which is lower than I would normally have him, given his usage. But it does seem health-wise. He also got a little nicked up in the week last week. So, yes, unfortunately, Najee Harris makes the hate list this week.
He is downplaying the foot injury, saying, I'm good. Mike Tomlin said he wants to see more from him as well as
You're hoping he falls in the end zone. He's not going to be efficient. You're hoping for some passing game usage in a game in which, to your point, they are not favored, even though I think they should be at home against the Patriots. But
Lionel probably shift. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see the Lionel shift there. But at any rate, you're hoping for passing game usage, and then he falls in the end zone if you're starting Harris this week. Again, I'm at running back 15.
So then the last one we have here just on the hate list is Dameon Pierce, who everyone was super, 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 super hot on beforehand. I may have encouraged people to draft him earlier than they should have. There's a bit of an issue at home right now. But the fact is that he was running back number 2.
Oh, you told Spike to draft him?
Yes, I did. But everyone was hot on Pierce.
Yeah. Apparently, except the Texans. Who gave, again, a 49-19 snap share to Rex Burkhead. So the reasons that I'm high on Rex Burkhead are the reasons I'm down on Pierce this week. 0 targets on 5 routes, only around 5 routes. Again, we talked about this. Texans a 10-point underdog to the Broncos. So we expect them to be down and throwing a lot. They don't seem to trust Pierce in pass pro. He played just 28% of the snaps last week. Seattle had only 13 running back rushes against Denver last week. That's a good defense in Denver, right? So I think the way they're going to be able to move the balls, I think it's going to be some Brandon Cooks, and they're going to have to throw quite a bit. So I've Dameon Pierce as running back 37. Right. So
he's
outside my top 35.
He's got
I think
Lovie Smith said he wants to get him some more touches, so that's
something.
Something.
Yeah, I do. Listen. Better days are ahead for Dameon Pierce, but not this week.
Not this week. Well, we have so much more to come here on the show on Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, including his love-hate list with pass catchers. That's what's going to be coming up next, so don't go anywhere.
All right.
Saying Mike.
I'm just seeing the disrespect just off the bat, but let's dive into the MaddenRatings.com so we can really look at it. I've heard it, but now I've just confirmed it. They gave your boy an 83. That's a B minus. That's a B minus.
Why ain't no way, bro?
I don't know. When I look at the highlights and the stats last year, I had no B minus stats.
No B minus for you, Michael Pittman, not here on the happy hour. You get an A from us. A from any fantasy manager. We love you here.
I mean, an A+ for just that entire segment, the editing, the whole enthusiasm. Also, an 83 is an A.
My favorite Madden rating story of all time is, and so I know those guys, and so I've done some stuff for EA Madden. I'm actually in the game. Like you can play, there's I pop up.
Who are you?
No, I'm they're if you play the game, people tweet. They have so there's a little cartoon avatar of me that tweets fantasy stuff.
I just imagine you as one of the players.
No,
I was
no.
You could
Although
be.
I've done that, that was a whole bit on the. Somebody did create a linebacker. Yeah. But anyway, so every player always complains their Madden rating isn't high enough. Every player, except Hunter Renfrow, who went to them and he said, "Listen, guys, my speed rating, it's too high. I'm not this fast. He's like, dudes, give me something to work up to.
Yeah.
He literally he was saying it with a smile, but he's just like, he couldn't believe his speed rating. I interviewed him his rookie year at the NFLPA rookie premiere, and he was talking about the fact that he didn't. It was hilarious. He's just like, yeah, man, I don't understand why they gave him the speed rating. Like, I'm slow.
You don't want to be overhyped then, because then everyone's expecting that. You're like, no,
100%.
honestly, that's not what I am. Okay.
But Michael Pittman makes the love list.
He's
JSB.
on the love list for you for pass catchers, and why?
Well, look, I'm at wide receiver 7 this week. He's playing the Jaguars, right? Jacksonville allowed 153 yards, 4 touchdowns to my undefeated in first place Washington Commanders last week. I don't know if you are aware of that. 4 touchdowns, 153 yards. Again, Pittman, 9 for 121 and a touchdown, 13 targets from Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan seems to have locked in on him. Alec Pierce dropped a touchdown. Like, he ain't getting that ball back. Like, for me, second most targets, receptions, and yards in a game in his career, Michael Pittman, in 1 week of Matt Ryan. So, I don't know.
Any issue with the quad?
Doesn't appear to be that way, no.
No, okay. Good to know. All right, well, we talked about...
mine, yes, sure.
Yes,
I mean, I'm an old man, but
yeah. I was asking about you, actually.
Right,
I was just curious.
That. And there's my elbow a little bit, and I bang that. And I
pretty much everything.
Pretty much everything. I'm losing my hair. Yeah, I got a lot going on.
Well, you got to get some hair extensions on or whatnot. But we talked about Mike Williams and Joshua Palmer in the first segment, and we know that all eyes are going to be on them tonight in Thursday Night Football. So you have them on your love list.
I do. I do have both of them on my love list. Williams comes in at wide receiver 9. I have Palmer at wide receiver 35. Again, we talked about it at the top of the show. But again, both guys in games in which Keenan Allen does not play, both guys have really good numbers here. We expect this to be a high-scoring game. They're going to have to throw to keep up with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Both guys, I think, are viable starts tonight. Again, look at my rankings for free on NBCSportsEdge.com, rotoworld.com. Of course, I'm a company man. But we like both guys tonight.
Right, and Williams had a great week 3 last year against Kansas City, sort of coming back. He had 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. We know he's the roller coaster.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So what's down last week would come up, you would imagine, as we said, unless you were on one of those rides where it's like you think it's fallen and then it goes further down. And I'm talking about roller coasters. I realized I think I lost you.
Well, I didn't know if you were talking about a roller coaster or you were talking about one of those things that's like so.
I tend to start the story in the middle of where I'm thinking it
right,
is.
Great.
Yeah.
Which is perfect for a broadcaster.
Yes,
No, like at Universal Studios in Orlando, they have this ride called the Hulk. And it goes, you're on the outside of this thing. It's not a roller coaster. It goes up, boom,
yes,
that. Like it's like,
no,
you know what I'm talking about?
Good.
Oh, it's Dr. Doom's Free Fall, I'm being told. Sorry,
Okay.
It wasn't the Hulk. Okay, sorry, Dr. Doom's Free Fall. I knew it was, all right,
Well, that's
sorry.
the thing. You think it's done. Like, I went on Hagrid's motorbike ride recently because I'm 35 years old. And you think it's done, and then it goes even further. And so with Mike Williams, the analogy is that you would think he had a down week last week. You think he'd come back up unless we are dealing with a roller coaster of such sorts. All right. The best analogies are the ones you have to explain for 5 minutes.
100%.
Okay,
nice
so
job there.
you also like Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit as well. Again, so Cooper Rush, I do think will lean on the tight end. It's a little bit of a cliche, but I do think some cliches are cliches because they're true, right, a lot of the time. So I do think that he's going to look with who we know, right? 4 of his past 5 games, he's had at least 6 receptions dating back to last season. This is Dalton Schultz, right? He's had at least a 20% target share in each of those 4 games. He had a 22% target share against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, we don't expect Michael Gallup to play in this game. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, there's not a lot in the passing game. For whatever reason, they don't want to use Tony Pollard there. Worth noting, the Bengals, last week in week 1, in that crazy game against the Steelers, Cincinnati allowed 115 yards to tight ends. Pat Freiermuth saw 10 targets. I think that's an area of the field that you can attack. So Schultz makes the love list here. I'm at tight end 4 this week.
Okay, so we will get to the hate list right now, and Mike Evans is on this one.
So again, not practicing today, a little bit of concern. Probably will be out there and gut it out, but even if he's out there, hard to love him. He's going to be. We expect him to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore, right? And so he's played 9 games since 2017 in which he has been shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore. He's had under 65 yards in 7 of those 9 games. 4 of them under 15 yards. 4 fewer catches in 7 of 9 games. 5 games with 2 or fewer catches. Like, Marshawn Lattimore has his number. Now, he's scored some touchdowns there, so that's really what you're hoping for here with Mike Evans, who is one of the great touchdown scorers in the game today. You're hoping that he gets matched up and he wins a 50-50 jump ball when they get in close, because they will try to do that. But I do think, especially given that if Evans is going to play in this game at less than 100%, I think it's hard for me to get, he's still Mike Evans. You're probably still starting him.
Target for Brady.
You're probably still starting him. You're probably still starting Mike Evans, but lower expectations here. I'm not touching him in DFS. I have him outside my top 10, which is, and I'll probably, again, these ranks were prior when I was thinking he was fully healthy. I'm at wide receiver 11, thinking he was healthy. Now that he missed practice again today, he'll come even lower. He'll still be a wide receiver 2 for me, but not like the top 8 guy that he normally is.
Well, we just have heard that Russell Gage did practice today, so that's good news for the Buccaneers.
Gage practiced. Evans did not. Julio did not. Yes. Fournette did practice.
Right. And so we also know that you're not so hot on Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, I love Rashad Bateman, but apparently it doesn't matter because Lamar Jackson is the one that needs to love him. He had a 16% target share in week 1 against the Jets. What are we doing?
Yeah, against the Jets,
a 16% target share against the Jets. He had that 55-yard touchdown, which was great, but other than that, he had one other catch for 4 yards. So that 55, one play bailed you out, so you were happy with it, but if you look at the underlying numbers, it's a concern. And now he's going to be shadowed by Xavier Howard. That's not great. So Bateman comes in at wide receiver 34 for me against a tough Miami defense. I think this is a tight end game. I think this is a Mark Andrews game, and I think Isaiah Likely. I'm still in on Isaiah Likely.
I'm very curious to see how this one goes down too. See how Tua does. Okay, but we'll talk quarterbacks later. But Tyler Lockett's also on your hate list.
4 targets.
I know.
Had 4 targets in week 1.
Same as Noah Fant.
Geno attempted only 3 deep passes against the Broncos. That's the 3rd lowest deep ball rate by a quarterback in week number 1. So you go back to last year, and you're like, oh, it's a 1-game sample. Okay, fine. 1-game sample. Go back to last year. In 4 of the 5 games that Geno has started, there's been 5 games in which Geno Smith was the starting quarterback the Seahawks and Tyler Lockett was playing. In 4 of the 5 games that Geno has started, Tyler Lockett has 3 or fewer catches and 35 or fewer yards in 4 of those 5 games. If you're starting Tyler Lockett, you're hanging your hat on, one big play. That's what you're hoping for. It's because, they'll take a couple of shots deep, and he has that kind of speed. But what made Lockett so special is he had that unbelievable connection with Russell Wilson. Geno's a great story, a fire quote, as we talked about.
It was a great
We're rooting
story
for Geno. We love it. But, it's still a quarterback that threw for under 200 yards. It's still a quarterback that needed 2 goal line fumbles.
He benefited a lot from the Broncos.
He needed 2 goal line fumbles from the Broncos and just the most brain fart coaching moment I think we've seen in a long time from Nathaniel Hackett.
He really lucked out. He really lucked out from Denver.
I'm at wide receiver 48. I need to see some consistency. I mean, Lockett's game is inconsistent to begin with, and now you have a matchup that we don't love. They're on the road at San Francisco. So tough defense, inconsistent quarterback play. I'm looking elsewhere.
Yeah, that might have been the highlight of the season for Geno Smith. We'll have to see. Hunter Henry's also on your hate list.
He played only 6 snaps more than Jonnu Smith. He saw 1 fewer target. This offense looks broken. Again, it's 1 game, so we're having to overreact, unfortunately. But they're playing at Pittsburgh. He's had 18 games with the Patriots, Hunter Henry is. He's been held to under 40 yards in 14 of them. 14 of 18 games have been under 40 yards. He is as touchdown dependent as a tight end comes. In games in which he doesn't score a touchdown, he averages 5.4 fantasy points per game. So my question to you, Julie Stewart-Binks, do you think he scores a touchdown against the Steelers? Because if you think he scores a touchdown against the Steelers, then fine, you can go ahead and start him. But if you think there's a chance he does not, then maybe Jonnu Smith scores it, or they do it with a run game, or the Steelers play tough defenses. It's one of the lower total games on the slate. We don't think a lot of points are going to be scored. You're going elsewhere than Hunter Henry.
Yes, probably. I agree. I don't think he's likely going to score a touchdown when you put all of those things together.
I'm just saying.
Would you then, just before we head on out, just curious though, would you stay away from New England?
Offense, yeah. I mean, again, but maybe the running gap, because Ty Montgomery's now hurt, so maybe the running back, it was a 3-headed committee. Right. So maybe now
Harris and
on the road at Pittsburgh, no T.J. Watt in this game. So maybe they go more run heavy, and so maybe it's a Harris and Stevenson game, and maybe both guys get enough volume to be flex viable. But yes, I think in an ideal world, you're not starting a Patriot this weekend. Yeah. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think
you've got better options.
Yeah, the offense doesn't look great. The running backs are fine. I have both running backs as as flexes this week, basically.
Okay, well, great insight as always from Matthew Berry on the pass catchers. And
I appreciate that. That compliment from my co-host is.
He provides us with the knowledge. Yes,
seemed genuine. Definitely didn't seem like you were like, I'm the host.
How do I throw to break? Well, we have so much more, including your love-hate list on the quarterback, which I'm very curious to see.
Okay.
Who this, and you guys do not want to miss who's on his love list. Holy smokes! That next.
Did you just say "holy smokes" unironically?
I always say it. I love saying "holy smokes." The NFL season is here, and the NBC Sports Predictor app is giving you a shot at winning $100,000 by entering Sunday Night 7's free contest between the Bears and the Packers. So if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. Welcome back into the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. I'm Julie Stewart-Binks, and we have the Love-Hate Show on, which is why I'm wearing my Def Leppard Love Bites. Because even when you love something, it might also not work out.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes it bites.
Now, did you just buy the shirt, or have you seen Def Leppard? Have you seen Def Leppard in concert?
I was supposed to see them this summer. I didn't. Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Poison all together. Didn't, sad. But
yeah.
I love Def Leppard.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Okay, but speaking of love, we're going to just go all love on quarterbacks.
All right.
And you love Aaron Rodgers.
We talked about this at the top of the show. I got stats. You want stats? I can give you stats. Like, whatever. He in his 4 games against the Bears the last 2 seasons, he's averaging 26.3 points per game. He owns the Bears, as we've talked about. All 4 games, he had at least 23 fantasy points, 4 touchdown passes, and 3 of the 4. So I can give you stats, but I'm going to give you some emotion here.
Yes.
He's Aaron freaking Rodgers. He was embarrassed in week 1.
Yes.
He's back home at Lambeau. He's playing the Bears, division rival. This game is not only in Lambeau at home against a division rival, but it's on prime time. It's Sunday Night Football right here on NBC and Peacock. Aaron Rodgers in prime time. He's going to get Allen Lazard back. Aaron Rodgers is going to go off. I'm just telling you. Aaron Rodgers is a bad, bad man. There are people you don't bet against. Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys. Give me Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers is going to have a big year. He is a spiteless guy for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers.
He takes the names, and he is going to come out pretty hard.
Yes.
I'm just curious, like, at what point do we – I mean, we're worried about the wide receivers, of course, but, like, at what point do we see how much Devontae Adams' presence is missed, right? Like, we saw week 1, but, like, how long is the leash?
But you didn't – I mean, what do you mean, how long is the leash? For who?
Like,
for
how many
fantasy
weeks?
Managers?
Yeah, like, how many weeks we go where we're like, hey.
I don't like to make a major move and benching Aaron Rodgers. I mean, again, it depends.
No bunching of Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
No.
So I'm not sure what you mean by the question. I will say that I don't like to make a major move with my fantasy team until week 4. Now, there's certain times when you can, like, and my column this week, my love-hate column, which is out on NBC Sports App, rotoworld.com, has a whole theme of don't panic. Like, there's a whole don't panic theme to it because it is just 1 week. Again, Aaron Rodgers, week 1 of last season at New Orleans, 1.3 fantasy points. He ended up finishing as a top 4 fantasy quarterback.
Keep reminding myself about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 week. So I think that he didn't have Lazard last week either. It was a tough matchup against the Vikings.
Justin Jefferson had.
Yeah, I just had a monster game. And again, we talked about this on the Monday show, but like I think the narrative around Aaron Rodgers changes somewhat if Christian Watson holds on to that.
Oh yeah.
Catches that ball and goes into the end zone. And now you've got like this
half
long
of the games too could have just like one thing one way, and we're talking completely different storyline. Okay, you also love Matthew Stafford.
I do. I understand. Like, listen, tough open to the season Thursday night. Just got his butt kicked by the Bills, but they've had 10 days to think about that. So they've had 10 days to prepare for this game at home against Atlanta. I'm sorry, at Atlanta. The game's in Atlanta. So a homecoming for Matthew Stafford. Obviously played his college ball in Georgia, going back to Atlanta. He had 41 pass attempts in week 1, so I'm not worried about the elbow, right? I mean, like, if he threw for over 40 times, he had only one game where he had more than 41 pass attempts last year. So clearly they're okay with the arm. He's thrown over 40. The Rams have the 3rd highest implied team total on the slate. They're 29 points. Again, 10 days to think about this. Against the Falcons, Jameis Winston, who is not as good as Matthew Stafford, went 13 for 16, 219 yards, and 2 touchdowns in just the 4th quarter last week against the Falcons as they collapsed and crushed Jay Croucher's bets upset
again,
win.
he must have put a lot of juice on that one
Yeah,
because it's the amount of times we've
referenced it a lot.
No, but
So come off the rest 10 days, I think, yeah.
It's very different defense he's going up against too.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bills versus the Falcons.
Very different. So I think this is a get-right game for the Rams offense, especially Matthew Stafford.
Yes. Okay, and also perhaps for Derek Carr, as we know he looked a little uncomfortable, but he has all the weapons at his disposal, and you think that you love him. He's
playing Arizona, which is straight trash. I mean, they're dumpster fire. I mean, let's be right. I mean, they're awful.
Straight trash.
I mean, they are. That defense is brutal. I mean, they give 360 yards and 5 touchdowns to Patrick Mahomes, 9.2 yards per attempt. That's the second highest allowed by any defense in Week 1. It's the second highest over-under on the slate. It's at 51.5, so we expect a lot of points to be scored here. Derek Carr played 7 games last year in which there were 50 or more points scored, right? Again, the over-under is 51.5. That's what Vegas is setting it at. He averaged over 20 fantasy points per game in games in which the over-under, in games in which there was at least 50 points scored. Derek Carr averaged over 20 fantasy points. Again, the over-under here is 51.5. Yeah, give me Derek Carr in a game in which we expect a lot of points to be thrown when he's facing a bad defense. I think Davante Adams goes off.
You think he goes to Davante as much as he did?
I do. I mean, he doesn't even need to. It was a 44% target share. If he gets to 35% or 30%, you're still very happy with Davante Adams. But yeah, we've talked about this. Josh McDaniels, the Raiders head coach, has not had a player like Davante Adams since Randy Moss in 07. He's got a new toy.
New toys. It's at your birthday. You play with them until you're bored and you find something else new.
Right.
Okay. Well, we have more that we want to get to on the show, but we do have some news coming out of New England, and that is to do with Mac Jones.
Tom Pelissero tweeting today, hashtag Patriots quarterback Mac Jones not practicing today due to illness. My understanding is it's not believed to be COVID-related. Jones has had an upset stomach, so they decided to give him the day off. So it doesn't seem serious. Seems like he will still be on track to play, but certainly worth monitoring because there's a chance it's COVID-related. There's a chance he doesn't get better. He's not feeling well. The flu is going around.
It could just be like a food poisoning.
Yeah, we don't know.
Maybe he had a big burrito or whatever.
Sure.
You never know.
Maybe a small burrito.
Burrito.
Why does the size of the burrito matter as to
because
whether
a big burrito, it can give you some bad stomach pains. That's for sure.
Right.
Yes.
Can
confirm.
Can confirm.
Yes. You got the stats. I'll give you some of the real life experience.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we have the last call. Speaking of real life experience, coming up after this on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. You don't want to go anywhere. Matthew Berry has got some great takes, and I've got some as well.
There you go.
Whatever those might be. A big burrito.
Hey, be sure to check out our brand new Sunday show, Fantasy Football Pregame. It's at 11 a.m. live on Peacock, peacocktv.com. It's your one-stop shop for your NFL fantasy and betting needs. Get your start-sit questions answered using the hashtag FFPregame. We get very interactive, me and Michael Smith and the whole crew.
Oh, love it.
Come check it out.
Michael Smith is an absolute gem.
He's the best, right?
He is the best. He is just great in fantasy football.
Yeah, he's hardcore.
Okay, speaking of hardcore, we've got some bets that we have.
We do.
Some props.
It is last call.
It's last call. So I like to throw a couple $5 bills on a lot of different things. So based on, are we going to roll a video of this or no? Okay, so I took some notes based on what Patrick Mahomes said last week, and let's check it out.
Let's hear.
I'm very comfortable with them. You saw the guys stepped up and made plays, tough contested catches. Like Juju and Marquez did a great job with that, and then obviously the tight ends played well and the running backs played well. The only one I was missing was McCole. I owed McCole 2 touchdowns, so I was glad I got him with the one at the end there, but he was getting open, and he's had a good camp getting open on those routes. I just have to connect on those if we want to continue to get better.
Wow. I owe McCole 2 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah. So when I heard that, I said, all right, I'm going to put that one in and wait for later and see. You could, right now for him, anytime touchdown scores, plus 195. But if you pair that with the Chiefs to cover, you can get plus 675. So that's some pretty decent odds, and I think that I've already put in for that.
So there you go. So we're doing that. We like that. That bet. My bet here is Jerick McKinnon over 15.5 receiving yards. Like, I don't think people realize how much McKinnon is used. I mean, I think everyone's focused on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting the 2 touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco came in late in a blowout. But remember, Jerick McKinnon, over 15.5 receiving yards. He's gone over this number 5 straight games that he's played. 51% of McKinnon's snaps are on passing plays against Arizona. 51% of his snaps came in passing plays. He had 26 total snaps compared to CEH's 24. So I don't know. For me, I like Jerick McKinnon. I don't think that's a big number in a game in which we expect him to be passing a lot, a high-scoring game.
Yes. And
give me McKinnon.
Speaking of passing, I also like Mike Williams and Patrick Mahomes. Both touchdown scores plus 900.
There they go. All right. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It's closing time. For Julie Stewart-Binks, I'm Matthew Berry. We will see you tomorrow on the Happy Hour. Thanks so much for tuning in. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.